So, a few weeks ago, I talked about how a politician used Bakassi boys to perpetuate evil. It's time to talk about how they stopped a vicious criminal and gave him a taste of his own medicine. I'm not a fan of jungle justice, but this was what was needed at that time because the atrocities of this notorious armed robber was unimaginable. Today, we are going to discuss the rise and fall of DERICO NWAMMA. So, have you heard about him? He was so popular in the early 2000s. There are several movies acted in respect to that. We are not going to only talk about Derico. We are going to talk about his friend Chejina because before Derico, there was Chejina. Derico's real name is Okudili Ndinwe and he was 22 at that time. Forget about his young age. The mention of his name sent chills down the spines of many people who lived in Anambra State at that time. Even the police were so afraid of him. In the early 2000s, Nigeria had a share of notable armed robbers like Dr. Ishola Onyemusi and Abiodun Jinobi in the southwest, Lawrence Anini and Derico in the eastern part of the country, though Anini is located where it is now called South in Nigeria, from Edo State to be precise. Derico Nwamama's name would ever remain in the minds of the Igbos who were born during his time of operation. He started out as a street boy in Onitsha. Then he graduated and became a pickpocket. After a few years, he went to the leader of a ruthless armed robbery gang who held the southeastern region to a standstill for many years before he was killed by Bakassi boys. Before he rose to prominence, the southeast region was under the control of another terrifying armed robber, Chejina. Under the reign of Chejina and his armed robbery gang, people in Onitsha were living in fear. Police were not left out of the story. They had their own share of terror. As Chejina was terrorizing the residents of Onitsha, police were receiving their own share of sad stories. Everyone had a story to tell. One of the most terrifying stories of Chejina's exploit was the one that happened on the 16th of February 1999. That was 2 days after Valentine's celebration. Chejina acted on a tip-off, laid siege on a family in Onitsha, hoping to get money from the husband. Unfortunately, the man deposited the money in the bank. He didn't come home with the money. Chejina became so angry that he grabbed the man's 4-month-old son and threatened to throw him off the building. And the man was living on the 3rd floor. The man cried and begged him not to. He swore that he was not with the money, but promised him that he would go and get it from the bank the next day and give it to him. When Chejina saw that he couldn't get the money from the man, he threw the 4-month-old baby off the balcony from the 3rd floor and shot the man twice on the head. Both the man and his 4-month-old son died that day. This is just little from many atrocities he has committed. Where should I begin? He forced many families to have incest in front of him for his own pleasure. He forced the fathers to sleep with their daughters and the mothers to sleep with their own son. If they refused, both would be killed immediately. Yeah, the man was a beast. I know many would ask why the police weren't called. Even the police were afraid of him. They know that if they investigate him, their lives and the lives of their family were at risk. So Chejina operated freely. Meanwhile, when all these were happening, Chejina and Derico were good friends at that time. They could co-rob banks and houses and also share information then. They also divided their loot equally in harmony. Many would wonder how this friendship made in heaven started. Let me tell you. It started during the famous Umweri and Aguleri War. During that time, Derico was not based in Onitsha then. He was staying in Abuja. He only visits the east when he wants to rob. After carrying out his operation, he returns back to Abuja. As in every relationship, there must be misunderstanding. This misunderstanding led to the breakup of Derico and Chejina's relationship. Problems started in November 1999 when the Obi of Onitsha called the Onitsha youth to help curb the rising crime rate in the city of Onitsha to enable their indigents who ran away from home due to crime return home for Christmas celebration that year. The youth sat together with some of the notorious armed robbers to know how to settle them and have peace, since the crime rate was beyond the police. Chejina and DERICO were present at the meeting. After the meeting, Chejina refused to yield. He even became more brutal in his attacks. The youths asked DERICO to help them beg Chejina to stand down, but the pleas from his best friend fell on deaf ears. So the youth started with the plan B backup to give him a taste of his own medicine. They collaborated with the police and DERICO. Yes, DERICO, to raid Chejina and his gangs. The operation was not totally successful because Chejina was not present at the time that they were raided, but all his gangs were rounded up and sent to the police. When Chejina returned, he learned that he had been betrayed by his best friend, DERICO. He became so mad. Without thinking about the consequences, he went straight to DERICO's parents' house. When he got there, he met DERICO's father and decorated the old man with lots of bullets. Bad idea. Very bad idea. When DERICO heard about this, he became so enraged that he set out for revenge mission. He ran into Chejina close to Emmanuel Church at DERICO Road and made bullets rain on his body. DERICO put Chejina into a wheelbarrow and pushed him to the nearest police station at Istiokwe, Onitsha. It was reported that Chejina didn't die immediately. When DERICO was pushing Chejina to that police station, Chejina begged him to end his life because he didn't want to surrender to the police. He knew that police were going to torture him. So DERICO ended his life before taking him dead to the police station. On getting to the police station, officers on duty rejoiced and danced as their greatest nightmare had been taken care of. They even lifted DERICO up as their new hero. Little did they know that they just eliminated the devil and they made way for the worst one more than the devil. That was the same day the terrifying name DERICO was born. After the death of Chejina, DERICO became the undisputed emperor of terror in the southeast. At the height of his notoriety, traders could hardly display their goods because of fear. Traders hardly settled to sell their markets because they were always on the run, ready to lock up their shops. When they hear day, before the call completes, their shops had already been locked up. There is no difference between day and night because DERICO will strike any time of the day. To elevate his notoriety, DERICO will rob the biggest and the most secured banks, cutting away millions of naira and leaving dead bodies of either bankers or customers as souvenir. After operations, he will boast of how invisible he is. DERICO's main target was Onitsha main market. He would rob many traders. It was just as if the traders were paying tithe, but not to church this time, but to armed robbers. He didn't stop at towns only. He carried his blood test to the villages too. No one was safe. The old, young, men, women and children were terrified at the mere whisper of DERICO NWAMMA. He took over people's farms, businesses and wives. Remember, he was just 22 at that time. All his family members got away with anything because they were related to him. At that time, he was above the law and he could not be arrested. DERICO killed over 200 people, including 25 police officers. If any of his gang members were killed, he would send shilling messages to the police and he would carry out his threat. Many policemen and their families were killed as retaliation. The hands of the police were tied. No one dared to make any arrests because they knew the repercussion. Governor Mbadiniju, the Anambra State governor at that time, was worried about DERICO's reign of terror as he was receiving hot heat from President Olusegun Obasanjo. Obasanjo questioned why a criminal was left to unleash terror in the southeast. Mbadiniju started considering a sort of security aside from the police. In May 2001, the Anambra State Police launched Operation DERICO, which was aimed at capturing DERICO and his gang members at all costs, but they failed woefully. DERICO heavily placed a lot of faith and confidence in his charm prepared for him by the traditional witch doctor. He boasted that this was the reason why the police never captured him. In June 2001, he launched an attack on a local police station to secure heavy weapons for a planned bank robbery in Asaba. Before I talk about how he was captured, let me first tell you the heinous crimes DERICO committed that resulted to the immediate introduction of Bakassi boys. In December 2000, DERICO and his gang attacked a 59-seater luxurious bus filled to the brim at the popular Upper Iweka Road in Anambra State. The bus was about to leave to Lagos when DERICO attacked. After robbing them, he killed everyone on board, including women and children, but 4 people survived. DERICO gave his gang members order to kill everyone and they carried out this heinous crime. And 4 people that survived, they survived this by playing dead until DERICO and his gang left the bus. Just imagine the trauma those survivors will face. It was after this that Mbadunji immediately introduced the famous Bakassi boys to help him save the state. On July 3rd, 2001, DERICO was on a bus going to Onitsha from Abo. When he got to Head Bridge, Bakassi boys stopped the bus. Bakassi boys had already received an intel that DERICO would be heading to Onitsha, so they mounted a roadblock at the entrance of Onitsha Axis Head Bridge. So when they stopped the bus, DERICO entered. DERICO jumped out of the window and ran away. But before he could make it out entirely, one of the Bakassi boys chopped off his left ear. The stink of pain he felt made him slow down his pace and he was captured. For a man who thought he was above the law and could not be captured, he broke down and started crying. He also pleaded for his life to be spared. Those Bakassi boys took him to Boromi Hospital for treatment because he was bleeding seriously. When the news of his capture broke, every single human being in Anambra State celebrated. It was a big news to people who had been living in fear of DERICO. On the 9th of July 2001, 6 days after DERICO was captured at the Niger Bridge, chanting songs of war, Bakassi boys drove in their convoy around town and ended at Ochanja Main Market Junction along the popular Opiweka. When their buses stopped, shouts of excitement and expectation rented the air. As news circulated that DERICO was captured, many people trooped out to watch and witness his final judgment. DERICO was dragged out of the bus looking bloated from severe beating from Bakassi boys. It was actually their trademark. His body bore cuts and gashes and evidence of what he must have gone through in the hands of Bakassi boys. He was in severe pain, but no one cared as the chants of war songs filled the air. Many people were also hailing the Bakassi boys for what they had done. The noisy crowd came to a halt when the Bakassi commander, Kompe, came out to address the crowd. There was a pin-drawn silence when he raised his hand. He told the crowd that they were not in the state for politics, that their main aim of coming was to fight crime. After he said this, he handed the microphone over to the now trembling DERICO, who begged for his life to be spared. He confessed that while he was on the run, he was sheltered by a member of the National House of Assembly in Abuja. He also confessed that he had 2 powerful protectors. One is the member of Anambra State House of Assembly, while the other was the chairman of a local government council. Can you imagine? During all the Bakassi boys' public execution, the suspects were given an opportunity to confess and say their last words before their heads will leave their body. In DERICO's case, as he was appealing to the people to spare his life, that he's a changed man, with the speed of a guillotine, a cutlass came down on his head with an unforgiving thud. In a flash, DERICO was beheaded. His severed head rolled on the floor before the crowd, while his convulsing body collapsed on the ground. You would ask, where are the police? Why were they not present as this was going on? Let me tell you. When police heard that DERICO was captured by Bakassi boys, they came on the day of his execution so that DERICO would be handed over to them, but the Bakassi boys refused. The police were also met with swift resistance by the people who stoned them and their cars. They barely got out of the mammoth crowd alive, even after they fired several shots on the air to disperse the crowd. People refused to budge. They stayed back. The people were already suspicious of the police because they felt that when the police gets hold of him, that he will be released the next day. So they refused to move. The police didn't have any choice but to leave him to his fate. As DERICO's headless body landed on the ground, the crowd cheered. They were satisfied as far as the Bakassi boys was concerned. This was a clear lesson and message to any criminal in Anambra State. The crowd jubilated and patted one another on their backs. They exchanged mutual congratulations. The beheading was not the only thing done to DERICO. Razor-sharp matches flew from different directions, chopping his pitiful remains into sizable chunks of meat. DERICO's remains was heaped up properly and rinsed with fuel and set on fire. This was how the 22-year-old Eastern Terror King ended. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this story. I really hope you did. So if you enjoyed the story, move up and check out our other stories. Thank you so much. Please make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much.